So this is Mark James, Navy SEAL, Kona athlete, raced across America, accomplished OCR racer, and he's just going to chat with us tonight, and we're super excited that you're here.
Well, thanks for having me. This is going to be very, very extemporaneous. My name's Mark James. I live just down the road, Coronado, California. A little bit about me. I was a Navy SEAL. I joined the Navy when I was 18. Went to 4 different high schools. I swam and I ran cross country in school because I was actually pretty uncoordinated. I couldn't dribble, catch, pass a ball. I was like, I could always swim and I could always run. And I used to ride my bike everywhere. So I met a Navy SEAL for the first time, and I told him I wanted to be a SEAL. And he said, well, you're going to need 3 things. Okay, I have my pencil and pen out. He's like, you're going to need motivation, motivation, and motivation. Check. Okay. And those 3 items were exactly what I needed to make the SEAL training. And then fast forward, I was only in the Navy for 6 years. I did 3 tours. And I decided I want to be a professional triathlete because professional triathletes make millions of dollars. And I think I probably have spent $1 million in the sport of triathlon. But I followed my second dream. My first dream was to be a Navy SEAL. I accomplished that. And while I was going to school, I trained for triathlons. And I managed to do the Hawaii Iron Man 10 years in a row. Those of you know about the Ironman, it's 2.5 miles of swimming, 112 biking. I don't want to over-explain anything, but for Hawaii, it is so difficult to qualify. It is so difficult to qualify that when you get to the race, it's secondary. Usually, I had to place top 2 or top in my age group, and then when I raced pro, you had to be top 2 or top 3 overall in races. So, I basically dedicated my life to triathlon for about 12 years. No regrets. I got to travel to New Zealand, went to Hawaii, obviously, a couple races in England. I lived in Northern California. That's where I trained, and for the most part. And then I went to grad school. I thought I wanted to train at altitude, so I moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, and trained at 7,000 feet. And the first month was pretty trying. I do a flip turn in the pool and come up gasping for air because of the altitude difference. But the nice thing is, training at altitude, I come down to sea level, and I just feel on fire. I could swim better and run better and cycle better. I did a race in the Maui. It's called the Maui Iron Man. The director of that race was second overall in Hawaii in the first and second race. And so he tried to promote this race. He was a former Navy SEAL. He brought me on board. I won it twice thinking, okay, this is going to be the next Hawaii Ironman. And then he got into confrontation with the actual Ironman. He got sued, and the race just kind of went under. And it was a beautiful course. Beautiful. Went up part of Haleakala, and the swim was fantastic. The run was incredible. So I met a lot of people doing triathlons. I'm sad to say I didn't make my millions of dollars. I learned to make money in the sport. I coached. So I coached high school swimming and running. Again, not a big money sport. But with that, I got a job as a cross-country coach up at Sonoma State University. I was a women's cross-country coach for 6 years. And then 13 years ago, a SEAL buddy of mine said, hey, they're looking for former SEALs that have an education and some background and some mentoring and coaching experience to come work at SEAL training. So I'm a civilian SEAL instructor. I put close to 3,400 guys through training, and I still do the swims. I do the obstacle courses. I don't run as much with them, the students anymore, but it's a dream job. I wear a uniform, and they call me Instructor James, and some of them call me Saint James because I'm kind of nicer than most guys. And in the last 6 years, I've been doing these races called Tough Mudders. Maybe you guys are familiar with Spartans. They're obstacle course races. So basically you climb up a net and climb through the mud and climb through a tunnel. And they have races. The majority of them are like 2 hours, like 10 miles. And then I do the races that are 12 to 24 hours. So basically, imagine a 5-mile course with 26 obstacles on it that you just do repeatedly for 24 hours. And every 5 hours, you have a tent set up like this, where I'd have maybe a big cooler of food and a sleeping bag, which I'd never use, and all these things that I'd use to nourish myself, because there's no food on the course. So that's kind of what I've been doing. Last year I was blessed. I got to do the RAM, which is the Race Across America, as an 8-person team, and that was a pretty exciting event, a chance in a lifetime. We rode from Oceanside to Annapolis, Maryland, and I covered probably about 450 miles in 20-minute intervals. And you're on the bike 20 minutes, you're off the bike for almost an hour, and then on, off, and you're having to work with a relay and also your crew members. So that was pretty exciting. I haven't really been on my bike since then. Yeah, I got kind of burnt out on biking. So when I was a triathlete, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be a professional. And a lot of times people, they get into sport for the right or wrong reasons. I wouldn't recommend trying to do the sport as for a living. I mean, some people can get away with it, but I think back then, and probably true today, the top triathlete in the world probably makes less than the 100th ranked golfer's caddy. So we put that in perspective. And he probably maybe the 1,000th ranked caddy. Difficult to make it. And then I think what was really important is that when you do triathlons, you have realistic goals. You know, have goals that, I always say you have 3 goals. Goals that you know you can achieve. Okay, I'm going to finish this race. A goal that you'd like to achieve. I'm going to win my age group, or I'm going to PR in a 2-hour event or a 4-hour event, or maybe I'm going to try and qualify for the Maui Iron Man or a half, or they call it half back in the day. You can't say that anymore. A 70.2. Or maybe a goal that's really not totally out of reach, but just on the cusp of being out of reach, but maybe you can attain, at least you can train for, like winning a race, qualifying, making money, getting a sponsor. When I trained for triathlon, I would try and do each sport 4 times a week. Now, a lot of us, this day and age, I can't train as much as I did back then. I was 24 years old. I was single. I was living in a cabin at my grandparents' place where I'd get up at 6 in the morning. I'd swim in the river up in Northern California for an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'd eat for an hour. I'd go ride my bike for 5 hours. I'd sleep for 2 hours. I'd go for a run, and that was on repeat cycle. And I managed to do that off and on for close to 10 years. Not that regiment, not that busy a regiment, because then I went to grad school and did some other things. But my peak mileage was probably 300 on the bike, 75 bike on the run, and maybe 25 swimming. In addition to going to grad school, and also I had to actually make a living, so I was painting houses to support my triathlon habit. So not much sleep, not much of a social life. I think I was asleep by 6 p.m. and up at 5 a.m. On and on and on and on and on. And it was good. Racing was good. I enjoyed it. I thrived off it. I loved competition. I loved to winning feels good. Achieving goals feels good. Meeting like-minded individuals felt really good. I would vary between training with people that were just a little bit better than me, but not every day. Because if you train with someone who's just a little better than you, you're susceptible to burning out. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. I train a lot. 80% of the time I train by myself, especially on the bike or the swim. And some of the times I train with someone just on the easier rest recovery days, someone who just I could run easily with, and we could socialize and social pace. And that kept me kind of balanced, because I felt if I was just go, I would get burnt out. Out of the 10 Hawaii Ironman races I went to, 4 of them I was overtrained, 4 of them I was undertrained, and 2 of them I was just perfectly so in sync with my body and my mind that at both these races, the night before, I literally wrote down the time I was going to do. It was 1993, my 3rd Hawaii Ironman. I wrote down 9:38. And the next day I went 9:38 in like 22 seconds. I was that in tune. And then the year after that, I was overtrained. And the year after that, I was undertrained. There's such a balance for a race like that. Now, some of you guys want to do sprint distances. That's different training than Ironman training. You can get away with maybe doing 3 days a week in each sport. And then also it's more of an intensity. I was better at the half Ironman distance because I could maintain a 6-minute pace, whereas I had a really difficult time going sub 5-minute pace for a 5K. I could ride 56 miles pretty fast, whereas I could not ride 25 miles fast enough to keep up with the pros. I was a swimmer primarily, so I'd come out of the water maybe top 3, and then the cyclists would kind of gobble me up, and then the runners would catch me. And Hawaii, the same thing. I'd be maybe top 10, top 15 out of the water. I'd be top 40, top 30, top 40 off the bike, and then I could never crack the top 100 on the run because the runners were running 3-hour marathons, and I was around the 3:35 mark. And you want to be competitive, you got to run. I think the winner of the last Ironman distance went like 2:38. Yeah, that's after 112 miles of biking, which is just incredibly fast. So I miss triathlon. I have a box full of medals, of Ironman medals and different things at home, and I had to dig the sweatshirt. This is like the 20th year. You know, I think on the 40th year or 40 whatever now. This was in a closet too. I love the emblem. I love the whole swim, bike, run vibe, especially if you get to Hawaii. It's an amazing feeling. But you guys are basically living. If you live in Encinitas or live nearby, this is really where it started. You know, a great triathlete named Mark Allen, who is probably my favorite triathlete of all time. He lived he's a lifeguard here. He trained here. He lives up in Santa Cruz, where it kills me because I went to school in Santa Cruz also, and he lives up there now. That's a long story, but perfect conditions down here as far as you got the ocean to swim in, you got the hills, bike ride, run. Weather is key. When I lived in Flagstaff, I had to contend with snowy, icy roads. And here it's a little more conducive to try training, in my opinion. Anyway, I have the gift of gab, and maybe some of you guys have questions, concerns, comments. I can't answer any new age technology. I just only got onto Strava like last year, so if you want to talk about power meters and Swift and all those things, I have no idea. I just know that hard work always paid off. 3 sports, 4 times a week with at least one brick paid off dividends. And ultimately, my best year, 1993, I was swimming with a master swim team. I'd already used my college eligibility. I was running with professional runners that were training for Olympic marathon. And then I was riding with Cat 1, Cat 2 cyclists. Now, in all 3 of those groups, I would get my butt kicked. I could not keep up. But if I was to race any of those individual groups in triathlon, I would destroy them. And when I did triathlon, I would do halfway decent. And sometimes you eat that humble pie. You just learn from the best. As a SEAL, that's what we learn. People think, oh, SEALs are the best. Which is true. But we learned our skill sets from the best climbers, the best shooters, the best swimmers, the best skydivers, the best skiers, the best whatever we trained to do. We would seek out the knowledge of the people that were the best at it, train with them, learn as much as we could, and then hopefully put that in our package of being a SEAL. SEAL stands for sea, air, and land, so we had to be proficient at everything on the land, whether it's jungle warfare, winter warfare, desert warfare, urban warfare. On the ocean, whether it's being in the boat or being under the water, I train divers at SEAL training now, or in air. Some guys went and got their pilot's license where they could fly fixed jet aircraft, helicopters. We had to rappel, climb, etc.
So what makes the difference in somebody that makes it through SEAL training versus someone that doesn't? Because nobody shows up being like out of shape and right. So that's
So what makes a good SEAL? The attrition rate in SEAL training is extremely high. In this last class, there was 145 guys start, and nine finished Hell Week. That's just the 5th week of training. After the 5th week, they still have 6 months of training and then 6 months of advanced training. So a lot of times when a graduating class graduates, there's only 4 or 5 original from the original 200 people that started the class. And it takes the like how I started, my segue: motivation. When I went joined the Navy, I had moved around a lot as a kid. I went to 4 different high schools. My family, I lived with my grandparents for part of the time. I had no real direction. But when I talked to the SEAL and I saw posters of guys skydiving and running around with telephone poles and scuba diving, I thought, wow, that I want to do that. And I went to SEAL training with the attitude of, I'm going to do this or I'm going to die trying. And I took it to heart. Maybe that's why I'm a little messed up today and I want to constantly go. But I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And I did. I made it through a one fell swoop, 6 months. And I think my big regret was after 6 years, I extended twice, I decided to get out. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to do triathlon, and things weren't really happening the way I thought they would happen in the military. But when a guy drops out of SEAL training, he still has to serve. He can't just go home. Like, hey, I'm going to go home. He owes the Navy 4 to 5 years. He signs a contract. And if they want to come back, they can come back after 2 years. And they can try again. And I've seen guys go away and come back and make it. But majority of the guys, they drop out. 70% drop out. Another 30%, they don't meet the standard. There's physical standards. We do a swim and run and obstacle course. And there's also mental aptitude challenges. There's pool skills tests that I put guys through where I'm literally tumbling guys underwater, taking their mouthpiece out, and putting them in stressful situations. And if you can't handle that, if you panic, then you don't belong in the program. Because we do dives at night, we dive under piers, we're underwater for 3 to 5, 6 hours at a time, and it's extremely stressful, very, very, very dangerous.
How do you stay calm in those stressful situations?
Well, it's a lot of self-talk, a lot of self assurances. I have mental a positive mental outlook of this. Like, I think what was helped is having somewhat of an arduous life, moving around a lot, working lousy jobs, going into SEAL training where I kind of had it, I don't want to say totally rough, but tough, where I had some adversity in my life, where I had some failures in my life. Some of these guys, they've had no failure in their life, and we put them in stressful situations where they actually fail something, and we see what happens, and they see how, oh, this guy, Harvard Rhodes Scholar, astrophysics major, could be making millions of dollars, decides to go to SEAL training, all of a sudden fails something for the first time in his life, and he just like, whoa, and then he fails a second time because he's so worried about the first time of failing. What happens when you fail? Do you get back on the horse, so to say? Do you attack again? Do you stay in the program, or do you just give up? And I think I had so much adversity and I don't want to say total failure my whole life, but I had a lot of failures where I just said, okay, got to get back into it. Out of the 100 plus triathlons I've done, I have had 5 DNFs. Have you guys had a DNF before? You know what DNF is? It's almost the only thing worse than a DNF is a DQ. And I've had 1 DQ, and I wasn't too happy about it. And I didn't finish, and it was all bicycle related. And it was largely my fault. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have 2 spares. I didn't have a CO2 cartridge that was actually working. I got lost. I did the Alcatraz Triathlon. Have you heard of Alcatraz? So I've done that race 13 times. I was second twice. The first year I did Alcatraz was 1985. No wetsuits were allowed. And I was 6 foot tall, 160 pounds, and it was cold. It was really cold. That was my 3rd triathlon ever, and I was hooked ever since. So I think just having a positive outlook and just not giving up, and it's hard to do. Sometimes you get discouraged. You have a flat tire, or a race costs too much money, or something lines up where you can't race, and you gotta stay balanced. You gotta be realistic. Otherwise, you just get upset. I dated a girl who was an exceptionally talented athlete, and we go to her swim meets and go to her triathlons, and half the races she won, or she at least placed, and she was never content with the performance. She would win a race and she'd be upset the whole way coming home, and she was so kind of out of balance, and I thought that was really a unhealthy outlook. and it wasn't good.
Maybe say more about the motivation part. Do you think it's all intrinsic, or does there have to be an extrinsic part of motivation?
I think if you set your goals realistic enough, where you have those 3 goals where you achieve something, at least one of the 3 things you achieve, and have something a little out of reach that maybe you achieve, and then something real out of reach that is just fantastic if you achieve it. I think that's important, but I think you should be rewarded for your performance. I think you should be happy. I don't think you should be like this friend of mine that was just always unhappy. And then she actually talked to a sports psychologist and kind of, delved in, peeled away the layers of the onion about what was bugging her, about not feeling good enough. And then she was had tremendous success after that, and it was a pleasure to be around, because she was like happy with her. And the funny thing was, she was losing races, and she was like happier than when she won races, which is totally out of bounds. I think you just got to have a reason. I mean, ask yourself, why race? Why do triathlons? Is it because of the camaraderie? Is it because you want to get in shape? Because you want to win races? Because you want to win money? There's got to be a reason that keeps the fire alive. And if the fire isn't there, then you got to figure out, what do you need to do? I think having camaraderie, you guys are in a club, and that's outstanding. That's awesome, because you're going to have days, if you haven't had them already, where you just don't feel like getting up and going in the pool or going in the ocean. And you're going to have that buddy that says, hey, we're going. And then the next week, when they don't want to go, you got to, hey, we're going, no matter what, we're going. Or that buddy that you're on a bike ride and you feel like turning around, and they just keep you motivated. Self-motivation is very difficult, I think, unless you have some kind of written goals down. Goals help. I used to keep a logbook, but I became almost I don't want to say a slave to it. I a couple of years, I was like, it would be Sunday night, and I'm like, I wanted to hit 300. I hit 287, and I would literally get on my turbo trainer or go for a night ride just to top off that 300, that chart. I became like obsessed, and that was the year that I overtrained. I didn't listen to my body, and I went into a race. Ironically, I spent this one workout, I duplicated a half an Ironman distance 3 weeks before the Hawaii Ironman. And it was an incredible experience. It was out of body. I swam by myself. I was running probably 5:30-minute pace for 13 miles. I was just on fire. I'm like, yes, I'm so ready. Well, I didn't realize it, but I put my whole training taper into that day. And it was actually 2 weeks later that I went to Hawaii, and I was completely fried. My buddy and he passed me on the bike after the swim. He said, come on. I go, nope, I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. And that went on for 10 and a half hours of me just feeling just bad. And he wanted to talk about training. I'm like, nope, I don't want to talk about training. I don't want to talk about training ever again. It took me a month to talk about training again. And then the next year, I recalibrated, looked at my goals, looked at my logbooks, figured out what I wanted to achieve, and then readdressed those things that were negative, and then came back positive and did it. Priorities. Where is triathlon in your life? For now, my priority is family. I have 3 kids, 21, 19, and 16, that are all living at home, and so I got to make sure that they're good. My wife's Glover, she's known her since 7th grade. I joke she's in 9th grade now. She hates that joke. She's almost 12 days older than her, and she's not a triathlete. She's a poet, writer. If she gets a time to herself, which is rare, she'll write, she'll read. Our book has 10,000 bookshelves everywhere. If I have a moment, then I'll try and go for a run or a swim, or I get on the obstacle course down south, and that's my passion. And then we just balance each other out, kind of like yin and yang energy. But what are your priorities? Is it fitness? Is it fame? Is it fortune? Is it camaraderie? What is it that draws you to the sport? I was a triathlete because I had trouble catching or throwing. I mean, I went to school. We had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders on the same team where our school was so small. And we'd be picking baseball teams. And it would come down to me or Timmy, who was a 6th grader who was like blind in one eye. And they'd like, oh, we'll pick Timmy because he can catch. Mark can't catch. But then when it came to swimming, I could swim. Even at SEAL training, I do all the 2, 3.5, and the 5-mile ocean swims with the students. I've swum over 2,000 miles with the students. We don't swim freestyle. We swim side stroke with fins. It's all low profile side stroke. And no one beats me. We've had 3 Olympians come through, swimmers, and knowing I can swim straight. I can push fins, I can swim straight. That's my God-given gift. I can swim straight, and I can push fins. And that's my confidence zone. I get in the water, and I feel like Superman. Whereas if you guys were to challenge me to a pull-up competition right now, I would have no confidence. I would be like, okay, I concede. You got it. I have no, and it's ironic because I do these obstacle course races, and there's no swimming in obstacle course races, and there's a lot of climbing, climbing up nets and poles and weird things. So
how do you stay like with your mind in the game for a 24-hour race?
A lot of pacing has a lot to do with it. Not get caught up on when the gun goes off. Guys are like, yeah, let's go. And those are always the guys that last 3 or 4 hours, and they go back to their tent, and they fall asleep, or they go home, and they come back 12 hours. Not all of them do this, but a lot of them do. It's a pet peeve of mine. Because at the world's toughest mudder, it's not like Hawaii Iron Man, where if you don't make the swim cutoff, you are disqualified. You don't make the bike cutoff, you're disqualified. In 24-hour races like Tough Mudder, you can literally go out in the course for 5 miles, go to your tent, sleep for 20 hours. In fact, I was on a relay last year. There was 4 of us on our 4-person relay, and one of our guys got really sick. And he literally went to his tent for 20 hours while the 3 of us did a 2-man rotation, because only 2 of you have to be on the course at the same time. And then at 7 or 8 a.m. he came out and said, I feel great. I'm like, yeah, you should feel great. Another relay experience. And we had a relay experience with the Ram. One of our riders got really sick, and she couldn't do a couple of the 4-hour sessions. So we all regrouped and we got together. Relays are a lot different than individual sports, and triathlon for the most part is an individual sport. I have done triathlon as a relay where I was a swimmer, but I preferred to do swim, bike, run.
Mark, on these long events, do you somehow take the total distance or time and break it down into smaller chunks that you can mentally chip away at?
I do. In triathlon, the beauty of triathlon is I'm purely in the moment on the swim. And I'm thinking. People think, oh, you just have to think when you swim or run. No, I'm constantly thinking, where's my stroke? Where's my fingers? How is my glide? Am I streamlined? Swimming is so much about being streamlined, and also, am I swimming straight? So I'll do a little breaststroke, I'll look for the buoy, and I'll literally point my hand right at the buoy, and that keeps me in alignment. In swimming or in triathlon, I swam freestyle. That's the fastest stroke there is. In college and in high school swimming, I was a breaststroker, which is great for like, where's the buoy? Oh, there it is. Oh, boom, and then back to freestyle. And so as soon as the swimming leg is off, then I'm thinking about my transition, my transition from my swim to my bike. And what's really important, you guys have all done triathlons, and I don't want to over-explain this, but I can tell you at least a handful of times when I came out of the water, I had no idea what my bike was. I set up my bike in the morning, and then 500 other people set off their bikes, and I wasn't sure what column, what lane. I used to put balloons, but other people put balloons. Know where your bike is and set up your gear and practice it. As a SEAL, what we do is we practice what we dirt dive. You would get like a compass, or you get a weapon and you'd practice, or you go through a house just shooting, not even shooting real bullets. You practice. So with triathlon, what I recommend you do is you have your towel laid out, you have your helmet, you have your shoes, you have your nutritional items, you have everything thought out. So it isn't second guessing. So you're not coming out of the water going, oh, where's my stuff? Where's my bike shoes? And the cardinal rule that I learned the hard way is never experiment with new running shoes, new bike shoes, maybe a helmet, new system, nutritional products. Hey, this sports energy drink looks really good. First year at Ironman, Gatorade was the major sponsor, and they gave us this huge box of all this Gatorade gels and powders and stuff. And I never drank Gatorade other than the bottle from the store. So the night before, what do? I eat all these drinks and gels and whatever else. Morning of, I'm eating all these gels and energy drinks. Good dog. They might be related. And I learned the hard way. My first Ironman. I went into that race so cocky. 1991. I was simultaneously running for a community college on the cross country team. I told the coach I was going to go to the Hawaii Iron Man the next week. He's like, "What?" Yeah, I qualified. I'm going. I went there thinking, I'm going to go like 9 hours. I'm going to be so good. 12 hours and 55 minutes. I was incredibly sunburned because I didn't wear a shirt, didn't put sunscreen on. My nutrition was off. I don't sound gross. You guys are all triathletes, so I had diarrhea. I chafed everywhere. I was throwing up. The whole way, I was like, never again, never again, never again. And then on Ali'i Drive, the last 20 yards, the crowd's there. This is 13 hours into the race, and there's crowds at night are all screaming, yay, like you're a rock star. And I'm like, I can't wait till next year. And then it was like, and next year, and next year, and next year, and next year. And then I 10 years. I was blessed to be able to do that race.
It's a lot different though. Like obviously you can feed off the energy of a race, but when you're in SEAL training, there's no nobody cheering for you.
No, well, there's instructors yelling at you, and sometimes the negative motivation works for some people. Sometimes being called a knucklehead, an idiot, or a loser, or whatever. And again, the instructors are there to weed you out. They want you to quit in training as opposed to going to war somewhere, and all of a sudden your buddy next to you's been shot, and you said, I think I don't want to be here. You can't do that. They're relying on you. You're the radio man, or you're the corpsman, or you're carrying the extra bombs or bullets or whatever. You can't quit in SEAL training. With triathlon, you can quit. It sucks. It sucks. I told you I had those DNFs where my bike, basically I was walking my bike 4 miles back to the transition. I refused to ride because I had double flats and I only had one, and there I was riding with sew-ups. So people were offering me little tubes, which is kind of illegal, but no one had sew-ups to offer me. And I was just ill-prepared. I was just dumb.
Do they still ring the bell? Is that still a thing?
They do, and it's demoralizing. I've worked probably 22 Hell Weeks. Hell Week is actually going on right now. Hell Week consists of staying up from Sunday night till Friday morning with maybe 3 hours of sleep the whole time. And you're not just sitting there playing Fortnite at home. You are, which I love. I love Fortnite. It's my vice. You are running with a boat on your head or carrying a log, doing presses or whatever else, and you are constantly moving. I have a buddy who worked Hell Week last night. He said, yeah, I logged 14 miles on, and he was running next to the guys running with the boats on their heads. And it's extremely difficult and challenging, and like I said, the attrition is very high. Last class there's 9 guys. They're down to 26 right now, but they still have, today's Tuesday, so they still have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning. Some guys will get rolled or dropped because they can't make the stand. They're just constantly being timed, and there's still a standard there. So, motivation. Some people write inside their hat. They'll write in indelible marker maybe their a late relative or a religious scripture or some kind of motivational saying, a mantra. I tell the guys, hey, have a mantra. Have something that you tell yourself over and over again. It can be cliche. Just keep swimming, or I love you, Grandma, or just do it, or whatever. And I think I had 1,000 mantras when I was going through SEAL training, and another 1,000 when I was doing the Hawaii Ironman, or a race in general, or these 24-hour races. How do you stay in the fight? Mentally, and what helps is eating. I've tried to do a few races without eating thing and just kind of fell apart too. I've gone on long bike rides where I've literally gotten off my bike, laid down in the grass, just like, just let me die now, because I ran out of food. The analogy is you're like a car. You run out of gas. Well, how far are you going to go? Constantly eat. Yeah.
Is there anything you took from the nutrition in the Ironman races to the selection process?
Back and forth. So I did SEAL. I did maybe a handful of triathlons before SEAL training, and I trained with the original power bars. Power bar was invented by a guy named Brian Maxwell, and a sad story with him. I don't know if you know this. He sold power bar to Nestle, and then for $6 million, and I think a month later he died. It's tragic. It's like a Alanis Morissette song. And I ate these power bars, and they were just convenient because you could just rip them open and you can eat them, and you could. I used to do these dive ops, and you'd basically be in a submarine for a couple of days, and it's very hard to bring food. I'd bring 20 of these power bars, and the other guys, hey, you can eat that. You can carry them easily. So things like that, and then over the years, different sports drinks, supplements. They've definitely come a long way since the original power bars. There's like 50 different energy bars and drinks and different things, and those gels and goos. I remember the first goo was called a leptin squeezy, and you'd rip off the top and you just suck that down, and the top was very sharp. And I remember just cutting my mouth open. And I remember right second Ironman, I was so desperate. I ran out of goos. I was so desperate. This is sound kind of gross, but I was literally looking on the ground for used goos, and I'm like, oh, there's one, and I just like squeeze the remnants, looking for. I've done it in obstacle course racing too, which is like desperate times come for desperate measures. And what I should have done is be prepared. Have a little fanny pack on your bike, tape stuff. Have food with you because you burn so many calories. I swear by Ensure. I'm a big Ensure fan, so the last time I did a long distance race, I probably had like 15 Ensures, chocolate and vanilla, extra protein ones, like little gummy bears, goos. Not so much goos initially, and I don't do caffeine in the first 18 hours of a race. I'll save caffeine for later because I kind of like have a big peak and then I crash. I'd go on long bike rides, and towards the end, I'd maybe drink a Coke, and I don't drink sodas. I don't like Cokes, but somehow on long bike rides, I do caffeine. I try and steer my kids and myself away from the Monster, the Red Bull. I know they're big sponsors for a lot of races, but I just think you're just asking for trouble with those. You know, I'd rather have my kid do a Gatorade or Powerade, or there's a lot of great products out there. Eating healthy is no-brainer. I would carry bags of little potatoes, boiled potatoes, and I'd chop them up and just heavily coat them with salt and sodium. That was a lifesaver at ramp, just eating potatoes after potatoes, getting calories. So, what else?
The two successful triathlons that you had, you said one you did a lot of training with the professionals, basically. What is it that the two that set you apart from the other 8?
I think my balance of overtraining, overdoing, thinking more is better, trying to compete. I'd read stories of other athletes that were doing incredible mileage and thought, oh, if I did their mileage, I could be as successful as them. And that wasn't right for everyone. I learned that I could do half the mileage. I didn't need to do 300 miles on the bike. I could get away with 150 and 30 miles of running, which is not very much, but high intensity, like a track workout, a hill repeat workout, a long slow distance run would get me the equivalent of running those 75-mile runs, and I wasn't as fried or injured. And so, and I think I was just more dedicated to the sport. I didn't have a lot of outside influences, or I wasn't working as much. I'd saved money when I joined the Navy, so the first 3.5 years out of the Navy, I didn't have to work. I went to school, and I was a professional student and a professional, I got my professional license, and back then all you had to do was place top 10 in 3 races, and you could be considered a pro. Great tax write-off. Not really. So it was just listening to my training, listening to my body, not overtraining, and putting it all together. And those 2 races just came about. The second time everything came about successfully, I kind of I still jinxed myself because I tried doing 3 Ironman races in 3 months. I did the full Vineman, and then I went into Maui and did the Ironman race that I won, and then I went to Hawaii. And I kind of set myself up kind of for failure for Hawaii. I think I could have been top 50, but I had IT band syndrome, and I was in a lot of pain. I did make very good friends, and I encourage you to do this with, I had a massage therapist, and I saw her almost twice a week. Very expensive, but getting worked on an hour and a half to 2 hours, just grinding out all the junk out of my legs and my body, and just someone who just knew, oh, you're out of alignment here, out of there, and just kind of working those muscle groups was extremely beneficial. It got expensive. I went through a lot of money pretty fast. I was making millions. No, I was spending millions. I spent $1 million. Yeah, a lot of money. So 100 races, 100 plus races, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that the ones I learned the most from were the ugly races where I didn't finish, and I had to think why. I drove 6 hours to do a race in North Carolina, and I came out of the water first. I was leading on the bike. I went around a corner too fast, and my rear tire came off this disc wheel that I just paid $500 for, and I had one CO2 cartridge, and I got my tire out. I got CO2 cartridge in there. I'd never practiced before, and the CO2 cartridge got stuck inside the disc, and I'm like, and now the cyclists are catching me, and they're all passing me, and the race marshal's just sitting there going, I can't help you, I cannot help you. I will have to disqualify you. And I'm like, oh, God. And that was the race. I had to walk that bike back to the run transition, not do the run, and drive 5 hours home. Just dumb mistakes. Did I make that mistake again? No, I didn't. I practiced with the CO2 cartridges. I learned how they worked. I learned how to change a flat. I encourage you guys haven't changed a flat yet. You will, if you haven't yet, you will have a flat as a cyclist and as a triathlete, and it is the worst. DNFing is the absolute worst. The DQ thing was pretty much on me. It was kind of a stupid thing. I put my bike in the wrong spot, and I thought it was a little harsh because they had this huge area that no one was using, as opposed to putting their bikes all in their little racks over here. So I put my bike in the wrong spot, and then later on I was like, DQ. I'm like, oh, there's rules. I finished the whole thing. Yeah, I got third overall, and then I got DQ'd. Yeah, and then it's I mean I don't want to whine too much, but two things that really upset me was, one was people, because I raced so much. I lived up in Flagstaff, and I raced so much. A lot of people thought, oh, he must be a trust fund kid. He's racing so much, trust fund kid. Man, when I ran out of money from the Navy, I was painting houses, painting apartment buildings. That's no trust fund. And then which was discouraging, was I placed pretty well. I remember I was working as a lifeguard up in Northern California, and this guy came down to the beach, and he's like, yeah, you hear about those times yesterday, top 3? I'm like, yeah. I didn't say anything yet. He said, yeah. Well, they were all juicing. They're all doing steroids. And I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. Look no, there's no way a guy could do. I went a 4:06 for a half, which was pretty good back in the day. Now you got to go 3:50 or 3:42 or whatever. And I'm like, really? So you're thinking the top 3? And I go, I'll tell you, I was second, and I don't even do aspirin. I actually I wasn't drinking back then. I really enjoy red wine now, but I wasn't. No alcohol, definitely no drugs, not even like Motrin or anything. I was just strictly anti any kind of drug. And then, so there was that. And then what was frustrating too, maybe 10 years later, I talked to different guys that I raced with, and they would kind of confess, yeah, I was doing EPO, I was doing amphetamines, I was doing this. And, kind of like, I don't know if you remember, well, everyone knows Lance Armstrong. I raced against him several times, and when he was a triathlete, because he started as a triathlete and then he became a great cyclist. I wore the yellow bracelet, and I was like full hook, line, and sinker, man. I love Lance Armstrong. And then he kind of confessed to doing that stuff. And then again, in cycling, a lot of people are doing drugs, but being kind of accused or thought of that I was doing stuff was kind of upsetting too. Took away some of my momentum, and then I just had to okay, I'm in this for me, and I know what I did right and wrong. And it was frustrating getting sponsors. I'd get helmets and lots of power bars and energy drinks and shoes and clothes, but making money. The sponsors, they wanted you on a magazine cover, or they wanted you to win, and the sponsors were tough. They just say flat, you want money, what are you gonna do for us? So it was extremely hard getting sponsored. I was just laughing because last year at RAM we did this ride across America, and we raised $150,000 for different veterans organizations, and we were sponsored, heavily sponsored. I got a bike, a helmet, shoes, clothing. I'm like, wow, where was all this? Where was all this back in the day? Now I'm totally out of my prime. But it's all relative. Yeah. What else?
What do you do on a day when, because everyone has great training days and you feel really good, but what do you do on the days when you're not feeling good and you have to go out there and do the work?
Well, that's when you have to have that little discussion with yourself. Is it really important? I was that person. I'm like, oh, I have to do this workout. It's a brick day. I have to do the workout. Next day is a 20-mile run. I have to do it. Why do I have to do it? So two things you can do. If you're really feeling bad, you got to kind of do like a self check. Like, is my heart rate elevated? Do I feel extra grumpy? Am I eating okay? Well, you either do two things. You do nothing, which is tough for a lot of. I mean, a lot of us are like, we have to do something, or maybe you just are content with doing a fraction of what you were doing, and make a note of it. I used to, in my logbooks, I'd write, how much did I sleep? What did I do out of the ordinary? Did I go out and stay up too late? Did I party? Did I overtrain? Why am I the way I am? Sometimes you can get things in sync, and sometimes it's just you can't control it. But you got to be, I think, ultimately it becomes down to a mental thing of like, you got to like forgive yourself. It's okay. You can theoretically go 3 weeks, which seems like a long time, without training and not lose that much. You know, I can get in shape pretty quick and I can get out of shape. I don't want to say as quick, but it's you just got to have realistic goals. And then who are you competing against? Are other people doing certain goals or certain mileage, so you think you have to, or whatever else? It's hard. It's very easy to be hard on ourselves. You know, you just keep things in perspective. Make a note of it, and then hopefully the day after, as opposed to going out there and then, you know, I tell you, there's nothing worse than, in my opinion, than an injured A-type individual triathlete who can't, for a you know, maybe you're down a day or two, but now you're down 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. You have a stress injury or a muscle tear or something, and now you're really out of the fray. That's tough. So you can cross train. 1 year Ironman 96, I could not run for 6 weeks, so I aqua jogged. You guys aqua jog before? It is the most boring thing. You wear a little blue vest or not wear a vest, and you're in the water, and you're just basically trying to do the running motion, but it's more of like a cycling motion, and you actually get forward momentum back and forth. So 6 weeks, I rode my bike, I swam, and I aqua jogged. And I was able to run a 3:25 marathon at the Vineman up in after no running for 6 weeks. So it's pretty impressive because you had the resistance. You got to duplicate the stuff.
How did you stay motivated to go to the pool and do that, though?
I just had a goal. I was extremely driven. I looked at my results. I said, this is where I want to be. I'm going to do this. Kind of like that Bud's SEALs training mentality. I'm going to do this or die training. I didn't want to die doing triathlons, but I was just very driven. I don't know if it's because I wanted to always prove something to myself, or I live with my grandparents, prove something to them. I liked them when they were proud of me, when they said, good job. I liked the accolades. I liked crossing a finish line and hearing people, yay. You know, I don't know if it was narcissistic or just something that made me feel good inside, like worthy. You know, I'm not that way so much anymore. I'm kind of like, You know, I've gotten away from it. Maybe because I did so many years of triathlon and this whole
too far away if you're doing 24-hour races.
Well, yeah. So I should piggyback or back that up. So in 2017, I wanted to win this thing called the Holy Grail. It was like the most mileage out of any other Tough Mudder in the competitive series. And I came short 10 miles to this 32-year-old world champion. And it was my 50th birthday, and that whole year I'm like, I'm going to win this series. And I almost won it. And the next year I'm going to win this series. And I met this British guy, and we trained together, and he won it. He raised a bunch of money for suicide awareness in England. And then the third year I'm like, I don't know if I could do this. And he actually personally called me up and said, hey, this is your mark. This is your year. I'm like, okay, I'm spending a lot of money on these races. I'm like, okay. So I learned that if I did the 10-mile race in the morning and then the 12-hour race at night, I could match the guys that are winning the 12-hour race, because I can't compete against 30-year-olds anymore. I'm just not. I don't recover as well. So they were going like 50 miles. Well, I was also going 50 miles because I was doing the 10-mile race, coming back 6 hours later and doing the 12-hour race. And I just did all the races. I did a lot of traveling, and then I ended up doing like 380 miles that year. And the next person next to me was like 310. And so I won the big Holy Grail. Yay! They're like, we give you free entry to all the races in 2020. Yay, you won. And that was 2020. And then 2020, COVID hit, and it's like, and I just lost all motivation. Like, well, we'll roll it over to 2021. But by then, I started working on a house, and I was doing some stuff with my kids, and I just like, I lost that drive, that desire. And this year, I don't have the desire to do obstacle course races. Sorry?
It's not your goal anymore.
No, well, no, it isn't. I've already kind of, in fact, there's a tape of me at the finish line. I'm like, hey, this might be my swan song. And my hands are all swollen, and I'm just like, yeah, I got it done. Now, what is next? I almost, you guys have heard of the Otillo races? Have you heard of Otillos? Swim runs. And there's supposed to be a race in Catalina, and that's my forte, swimming. And I can still compete swimming. The only thing I don't really like about it is you're partnered up with another person. I think you have to be tethered. You have to use a funky buoy, pull buoy, hand paddles, all these things. And anyway, there's swim run races. And they look really exciting. And I'm excited right now just talking about it. Whereas I'm not as excited talking about obstacle course races. And triathlon, I'd love to go back to Hawaii. I'd love to, but the whole cycling aspect right now, I'm still like, I got to probably see a sports psychologist about my, in fact, I'm selling my bike. Anyone buy a 58 felt bike for sale, very cheap. I see myself doing these swim run races. Those are fun. You literally swim with running shoes to an island.
Get on a bike
I know,
again.
which is bad. You don't want to have that happen. You don't want to have that negative. I'll be back. A 4-person team, not 8-person team. But the Otillos, you literally swim to an island, you run, and then you swim, and then you run. You're swimming with a pull buoy and running shoes, and then you have to be tethered. And the guys use hand. I don't know if you guys used hand paddles before. I don't like hand paddles. They might stretch my shoulders.
Is that because you got shoes?
Well, because you have shoes on. So I don't know if you guys. With pull buoys, it's kind of like you can get hooked on it. But pull buoy is like swimming with a wetsuit. You know, they have that flotation. A lot of guys get hooked on pull buoys. It's like, oh, the pull buoy set. Yay. You just have to let your legs kind of float. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. If you have shoes on, you
Yeah.
You gotta do something if you have shoes on.
Keep your feet afloat. We were talking earlier about swimming in the ocean for the first time. I definitely encourage you, or you guys are all ocean swimmers, but some of these people that come out and do a triathlon for the first time, and it's cold water, ocean, the best advice I give them besides getting in the ocean and swimming is at least getting in the water before the race happens, so you get used to the cold water. I can think of a lot of lake swims where I just dove in and I'm like, oh, I can't even breathe for a couple minutes, and the race is already going. Not good. Oh.
How about any marathon swims or anything like that?
I've done several of the 6-mile swims with the bud students, and we swim side stroke with fins, or if I don't use fins, then I'll swim freestyle, and that's a 3.5 to 4 hour effort. And for some reason, it's like for some reason right now swimming 6 miles is easier than running 6 miles. It's just I think I got a torn meniscus right now and some hip things going on, and it's like painful. Whereas swimming, I just get into a groove. I'm out there. There's like a lot of times there's dolphins swimming around me. There's probably a couple sharks out there, which is also a little exciting. I like that.
Good exciting or bad exciting?
Well, it's kind of like that adrenaline, like that they could be out here right now. Yeah. Tow a cow's head behind me. Yeah. No.
Do you wear a wetsuit when you do these swims?
Yes.
Okay.
In the summer months, I've come up here before though. I've swum La Jolla, and I've swum here without a wetsuit in like July, August. It's like 64, 65. I prefer wearing a sleeveless wetsuit. I like the buoyancy. I like feeling fast in the water. The wetsuits have come a long way since when I first started with wetsuits. The full sleeve, especially, were so tight. It felt like you just trying to get your rotation going. Now there's so much flexibility in a good wetsuit. The advice I will give you is rinse that wetsuit out. Don't leave it in the sun. Rinse it out, because the salt water and the sun and the chlorine too will just eat away a wetsuit. I've lost some $300, $400 wetsuits just because I didn't take proper care of them. And then I also do the bag trick where I put a bag on my foot and then put the bag on. You gotta do that, right? Yeah. You guys probably know more about triathlon than I do, because I haven't raced for a long time.
She's asking, what's this trick? What's this trick?
So you just get like a grocery bag and you put it on your foot, And then when you put your wetsuit on, the grocery bag is nice and slippery, and it goes right through the thing, as opposed to you getting your foot, especially if it's wet, stuck in there and you're pulling. The two times a seal is the most vulnerable, where you can like attack a seal, is when he's putting on his wetsuit and when he's taking off his wetsuit. Because he's just taking that, go over there and smack him. That's just me. Don't do that.
So they all swim with wetsuits as well, and in training.
The seals in Bud's training, they have their wetsuits go to their knees and full sleeve, and they have to wear like a very thin life vest that has a CO2 cartridge, and they have to swim with a buddy. They're no more than 5 feet apart from their buddy the whole time. It's just a buddy system, whereas I do my own thing. I've had a good life, so it's okay if I go. Yeah. They did, but right now my youngest is really into skating. He loves skating, loves the Encinitas skate park. I come up here and bring him to that. My middle is in 2 bands, so he's really into music. Has like 7 guitars and just really into music. Although he works out, he's very strong. He talks about going to SEAL training, which I'm kind of like, oh, I worked there. I know what it involves. And then my daughter is really into plants and CrossFit stuff, and she just has like 100 plants everywhere, herbs and different things. They all have their own likes. I don't want to say I blew it, but my daughter, when she was like 6 years old, she could swim all 4 strokes. Butterfly, breaststroke, and I went to her first swim meet, and I'm like, "Hey, coach, what is she swimming?" And the coach is like, "She's gonna do the 50-yard kick." I'm like, "Yeah, that's warm. What's she swimming? She can swim butterfly and backstroke." And I was like, I became one of those parents. I was kind of like, "Well, come on, she can swim all of them. Why did she pick?" And my daughter was like, "Dad." And when she was like 9, she pretty much stopped competitive swimming.
She's like, "I can't stand you here anymore, Dad. I'm out."
And then my boys had no patience whatsoever for swimming back and forth. They couldn't understand why would anybody swim, 10,000 yards in a pool. They just didn't. It's just dumb. I remember in college, I graduated high school when I was 17. Went to a year of community college, swam for them. Went in the Navy for 6 years. Still had swimming eligibility. Swam for the junior college 6 years later. And then swam for a D3 school, UC Santa Cruz, when I was 26 years old. It was great. Everyone wanted me to buy beer. It's terrible. And then I tried to do the times that I did 6 years prior, which I couldn't do because I was a breaststroker, and now I was doing all this marathon running. And then I went to grad school, like I said, in Arizona to train at altitude, and continued to swim, bike, run. Got my pro license, which doesn't really mean much, and kind of followed that dream until I got married and started having kids, and then things kind of, my priority was, okay, I'm going to fix up this house for 3 years. Fixed it all up, put 80 grand into it, and this is 2008. And if you know about the market, wham, 80 grand in, lost 100 grand on that. So my motto is, with anything, buy high, sell low. So whether it's real estate, stock market, I used to buy and sell G.I. Joes online. I'd buy them high and I'd sell them for nothing. And yeah. Anyway, it's good to have failure. It's good to have failure in your life where you can just you bounce back from it. And one of the things I do kind of preach a lot is to when shit really goes south, excuse my French, je parle français un peu, is have a sense of humor. Be able to laugh in the face of adversity, I mean, not psychotically, like if a shark's about to rip your legs off, like ha ha ha, but just be able to go, oh well, learn from it and move on, because no one likes a grumpy person. He goes back to that friend I had who was just always so darn grumpy. You won your race. You broke your record. Not good enough. No. So, yeah. Any other secrets to triathlon you want? Anything? Yes.
Not triathlon related, and I don't know how you feel about David Goggins. One of the books that I really enjoyed reading last year was Can't Hurt Me. I don't know if you read that book. But I'd love to hear just a good
David Goggins story. So I joke with, when I started SEAL training, he was at the command when I got there, and he was taking a little heat because he wanted to go through Hell Week again as an instructor with the students, and he was fully capable. I mean, the guy is an incredible machine. In fact, I often call myself the White David Goggins, which I've told him that. He laughed. He's like, "That's great." I go, only I can't do. I go, but David, you can't swim, and I can't do pull-ups, which is untrue. He can swim pretty good, but he can do 1,000 more pull-ups that I can do. He had the right mindset, and it cracks me up whenever I see his videos. He's extremely motivational. He's got that 4x4 by 48 plan, which my sister has done, and he's just extremely driven. And I don't know how he keeps that drive. I mean, he's made it part of a living. He's raised a lot of money, a lot of awareness. Some people don't like him because he's like out there talking, but I think he's nothing but a motivational person. And if you look at his backstory, how he was a pretty big guy back in the day, and he's got a horrific past, and he's had a lot of hardships where he shouldn't be where he is. He should be, maybe, I don't want to say he should be. He could have very easily up incarcerated or dead or addicted to drugs or whatever else, and he's done a lot. And he just so happened that he was also a SEAL, and he's an incredible athlete. But I'd love to do one of these Otilla races with him.
That would be your partner?
That'd be pretty good, yeah.
The White David Goggins. And
White David Goggins and David Goggins.
Team
Yeah,
Goggins.
yeah.
Team Goggins.
But he can't. I was gonna tell him not to swear so much. Every other word, my motherfucker dead. He's yelling. I watched his video. I'm feeling like he's yelling at me.
He's trying to motivate you.
I know. I know. Some people like that.
He does. He says, I think we should look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he'll tell you front, and some people like that kind of reinforcement. Some people get intimidated by it. I do projects for a company called SEAL Fit. They used to be out of Encinitas here, and people pay a lot of money to do a SEAL type experience for 50 hours where they stay up, we yell at them, and we have them running around with boats and logs, and I get to be hiked up in the mountains with them. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we started up at Ponto and walked all the way down the beach, and we stopped here at 2 a.m. and someone had left the fire pits running, and myself and the other two cadre, we got to sit by the fire as I had the people doing the camp run back and forth, get wet and sandy, and I said, wait, can't get in the fire. Nope, you're going to be miserable. You pay for this experience, you're going to pay some more. Yeah. So it's kind of funny, but that's the only David Goggins stories I have.
I don't say David Goggins, but just any good SEAL stories that you have?
You heard of Jocko Willnick? So I'm currently putting his son through training, and he's a Jocko, a mini Jocko, 18 years old, just.
And he's still in it.
He's still in it. He has we rolled him because we were on a dive. I was testing him, and he was just like holding his ears. He was like, ah! And I'm like, what the heck? And every diver and every SEAL has had experience with I don't know if you guys have had swimmer's ear, where you just have like your ears just freaking it's a serious problem when you get an ear infection. And he was like writhing in pain. I go, what is wrong? He's like, nothing. I go, what is wrong? He's like, my thumb's gone on my ears. And so we had him checked out, and his eustachian tube, he had like what they call surfer ear, where his eustachian tubes are kind of tightened up, and so they had to put balloons in there to kind of expand him. So he's currently rolled, but he's a good kid. His dad is pretty gung-ho. Another SEAL who's out there talking. All these darn SEALs out there talking to people. They should just remain silent. Only David and Jocko probably make $500,000 a year. I get maybe a piece of I get maybe a piece of pizza out of it, and yeah. So I mean, on the fly, extemporaneously, SEAL stories. I've done. I was in the 80s and 90s, so I missed out in Afghanistan. I missed out in Iraq. I trained for a couple things that no one's really. I trained for Panama. I was sent. I was supposed to go over there, and some other things happened. I think the excitement that I had, if anything, the most dangerous things were during training. My 13th of all numbers, my favorite number, my 13th jump, I jumped out, and I'm on free fall. So you fall, basically, you're jumping 14,000 feet out of airplane. You have altimeter on your wrist, and at a certain height, you do a wave off. So people above you, they know you're pulling your chute. So I do the wave off, look around, pull my chute, I look up and my chute is just kind of going like this. It's just like it just wasn't good. It just was not good, and so I had to do what they call a cutaway, where and this is an older chute where you had to like pull these buckles, take your thumbs in these cables, pull the cables, that chops away that chute, and then the extra chute was on my belly, and I had to like reach down, pull this cord, pull it, and it opened so violently that I swear the backs of my feet came around and kicked the back of my head. It was just like wham, and then I was just oscillating back and forth and back, and I'm coming down and pulling on the cords, and I'm like, I'm not a religious guy, but I became pretty religious fast. I'm just like, oh God, I'll be good, I promise. Oh God, and then I came down and hit the ground. I'm like, oh God, oh my goodness. And this instructor came out. He's like, hey James, you just have a cutaway? I'm like, yeah, which means yes, no, F you. And he's like, okay, get a chute. Get another chute. You got to get back on the plane. Because we had a plane for an hour, and we had to get as many jumps in as possible. We had just a stack of parachutes. And I'm sitting there going, oh, and I look up, and there's my original chute. It's still kind of like coming down. And I was like, oh, okay. So I put a chute on, and then I got in the plane, and I had that little voice saying, don't do it, don't do it. And I'm like, I got to do it. And I went and jumped. And now I was no longer doing cartwheels and somersaults and high-fiving my buddies. I was basically just looking at my altimeter going, head pull, please. Oh, it opened, okay. And opened. And so that's like a training story. I got 100 more parachute stories. Probably one of the more exciting things I used to do was I used to lock out of torpedo tubes on the submarines over in Norway. One of the ways we go and do a mission is they put us in a submarine, literally put you in what they shot torpedoes out of. They filled it with water. They'd sink down to the 40 feet, and they'd open the hatch, and you'd swim out of the hatch, and you go and do your mission and come back. And it was an extremely claustrophobic experience, because imagine there's 6 of us, we're all 6 foot tall, and they put us in a 22-foot long tube, and it's probably this is the diameter. And the guys would literally lift you up in the submarine and stuff you in, and now you're on a rebreather, so you sound like Darth Vader breathing in and out of this thing. And it all started when they said, hey, who wants to lock out of a torpedo tube? And I was into volunteering. Do you know what Navy stands for? Never again volunteer yourself. Navy. Well, I didn't understand that one. So, who wants to clean out the toilets? Oh, I want to. Yeah, that sounds good. Who wants to, lock out a torpedo tube? Oh, I'll do that. That sounds great. So, this is about my 15th time of getting put in a torpedo tube, and they shut the inner hatch and they start filling up. This is Norway, so the water is like 36 degrees, very cold water, and we're wearing dry suits, but instant ice cream headache because the water touches your face and you just feel the water kind of go down your neck and your hands. And I wasn't getting, all of a sudden I'm breathing out of this rebreather, which doesn't make any bubbles, and all of a sudden I'm only getting like a third of the air that I should be getting. I'm like, something's going wrong. I can't breathe. I'm not breathing. And I start going like a panic zone of like, I am dying. And so I reach back to get a little spare air bottle, and I can't reach the spare air bottle. And I know this whole process is going to take anywhere between 5 and 20 minutes to get out of the torpedo tube. And it's filled with water, and I'm floating around, and I can't breathe as well as I should be. And I'm like, I could either freak out and maybe kill the 3 guys in front of me because of just getting discombobulated in there, or just kind of go to my happy place and just say, okay, this is going to be it. So I chose the latter. I said, okay, I'm just going to die. And eventually I saw movement, and then the guys literally swam out, and I saw the proverbial light in a tunnel. It was Grandma saying, walk into the... No, it could have been. No, I kind of made my way out, and I kind of signaled to the guy, and I came to the surface, and I was like, oh my God. And then I passed out on the surface, and then next thing I knew, they were taking apart my rig, and there was a little valve that had gotten kind of corroded and sealed over, and it wasn't working as it should.
How did you not totally panic though?
I just kept on thinking about. I think what kept me in the fight was thinking about, if I panic, the other 3 guys, I'm going to kill them. So just take one for the team. Just frickin' die quietly, even though I wasn't breathing like I should. And also the training, that in SEAL training, they put you in scenarios like that in the water, where the test that I do. Like, that's one of the stories I tell the guys. Hey, this is where I was. You have to do the right thing. When you can't breathe, it's amazing how when you can't breathe in the water, how you just kind of keep your wits about you. We train guys to follow these certain procedures so they can actually get air, or what to do if they can't get air. Stay in the fight. Stay in the zone. Self-talk. visualization, all that stuff.
Did you do a lot of visualization? Did you do that?
I did then, and then when I was racing, and even still today. I got 3 kids, so yeah, it's a lot of stress. And then the other classic torpedo story is when you lock out, what you're supposed to do is 4 guys lock out. 2 of the divers go to the sail of the submarine, and you give a series of taps on the sail. Tap, 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 or whatever the tap is. And that lets the submarine know, hey, we're gone. Submarine can sink down to 200 feet, and we go do our little mission. So in this particular instance, the first 2 guys went out towards the sail. Myself and this Norwegian, we were coming out of the hatch, and I'm looking at them. All of a sudden, my buddy yanks at me, and I'm looking, and he's like going like this. And what had happened is he was so buoyant, he was trying to hold on to the hatch. And the hatch closed on his hand. So his hand was caught in the torpedo tube hatch. And he's like yelling like this. Well, he's not yelling. He's just going like this, and he's pulling. We're attached to a 5-yard cord. And I look at him, and I'm like, oh, my God. So I took my dive knife out, and I cut his hand off. No, I didn't. But I did. Because the submarine is going to start sinking, right? So I took my submarine out, my dive knife out, and in the back of the dive knife, I'm banging the emergency signal on the hull of the sub, bang, 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 and then I think I dropped my knife, and I pressed him against the nose of the sub because I knew the sub was going to come from 30 feet as fast as it could to the surface because that's the emergency signal. Only do that in case of emergency. And so I pressed him in there, and then he came up, and I was holding his name is Kaba. I was holding Kaba's head up, and I look up, and I'm looking at him trying to get his mouthpiece out, and he's screaming because his hand's still stuck in the hatch. And the captain comes out of the torpedo tube or the sail, and he's like, fast, fast. I go, open the hatch, open the fucking hatch. Kaba's head. He's like, oh. And then all of a sudden the hatch comes open, and his hand comes out. And fortunately, the water's so cold, you have to use these like 7mm mitts. But even his hand had already started swelling up because he had broken several bones in his hand. And long story short, he lived. And every time we saw Kaba after that, we'd wave like, "Hey, Kaba, how's it going?" Because he had pretended like he had no fingers. Yeah, you gotta laugh at it. You gotta laugh, and you gotta be really thick-skinned in the SEAL community because everything is a joke. Everything is like to make fun of something. And the ongoing joke that I have is that everyone makes fun of SEALs make fun of other SEALs. We all think other SEALs are jerks until one of us dies. And then that same guy you called a jerk the day before was like, that guy was my brother, that guy was my best friend. I'm like, no, he wasn't. Yesterday you said he was a jerk. Now he's I don't know, it's kind of sick, dark humor. But you have to be a little off, because if you start taking things too seriously or get offended or anything like that, it's just like, really? Shut up. You know, a lot of things were like, you had a problem with someone, you go behind the comics box and kind of fight it out. Okay, now we're best friends, have a beer, and just move on. It's that kind of nature. You have to be like that.
How does a SEAL re-enter into the world after being a SEAL?
Oh, it's difficult. It really is. I think I was fortunate that my passion was triathlon. And I encourage guys that are in now, I put over 3,000 students through, and I tell the guys, when you go to a SEAL team, there's a lot of pressure to perform, and you're going to do things maybe you don't have to do. I mean, ultimately, you're training to potentially kill someone, take someone's life. That's one of the mission sets you might have to do. And I tell them, have a positive, healthy vice, whether it's triathlon or weightlifting or chess or something, because you can very easily go to the dark side by drinking too much. Drugs, they get drug tested all the time. I mean, it's like names in a hat. They draw names. 1 year, I think I was drug tested. Maybe because it was me. People were always suspect, like I was a dope head. You get tested. If you could have marijuana or anything in your system, that was it. You're out of the program. And it's sad seeing SEAL students doing really well, and they get tested, and they have marijuana. A couple of them have got in trouble because there's all these CBD products that can pop on a test. So staying positive. There's a lot of alcoholism in the SEAL teams, a lot, and divorce rate very high, 80% probably. You know, so healthy activities, triathlon. Can't go wrong, right? How addicting is it? Very. right? It's like, when's my next race? When's my next race? Yeah. What else?
So I got a question. So is there a point where we all love triathlon, it's healthy, positive thing in our lives, as you said. Is there a point that you think you're doing too much?
Oh, yeah.
A point where you're like, I need a break from this. I need to.
Very much so. I would set my schedule. It would end with Hawaii. Hawaii would be anywhere in October, and then I would take downtime. And I learned to take downtime because one year I literally went from Ironman season to competitive college swim season to cross country season back into triathlon season, and I was just wondering why I was just getting tired. And it's not. I think what I learned, cross training, like instead of doing more triathlons or even swimming or running, I still did those in smaller amounts, but I did cross training by cross country skiing or rowing or skating or just going into kind of hibernation mode in January and February, and it's difficult.
It's hard here because the weather's so good.
It is, yeah.
It's somewhere cold. You're like, well, I don't want to ride. I don't want to ride my bike. It's 10 degrees out here. Yeah.
I know. It's so, and it's not that there's anything wrong with training year round, but I just found personally that I couldn't go 100% for 12 months. I go 100% for 8 months, and then 70%, and then 50%, and then build back up. Have like peaks. And my training, a lot of times I do like a 3-week cycles where 3 weeks build, and then 1 week just totally back off, and then 3-week build, and then 1 week back off, and that seemed to be healthy. And there's hundreds of books, and there's Mark Allen's doing some online. A lot of professional triathletes from my day, like Mark Allen, writes these fantastic fitness programs, and you kind of learn from what the pros did and what works. And I think the important thing is you be real and be happy with however you do. That keeps you motivated to come back. If you do a race, I found that signing up for another race within a month was a great motivator, because I'm really big on, we were talking about this training that I do. People pay like $3,800 to do the SEAL Fit, and it's amazing. People sometimes they don't show up. They just don't show up. If I sign up for $20 for a 10K race, I'm gonna show up. It's $20. I'm gonna frickin'. So maybe that would be a motivator, especially with the prices of triathlon these days. I pay $400 or $500. If that ain't a motivator, there's early bird specials, which I always recommend you do. And also, it's so hard to get into triathlons now. Back in the day, it's like we can't get enough people. Now it's like you're lucky if you can get into a race, right? You guys did Oceanside. It was like, unless you have sometimes clubs, great work in a club because you get maybe some preferential whatever, and then also you can carpool and work together. That's the best. We didn't really have clubs back in my day. My walking stick. No, it was like usually me. Triathlete? What's that? What do they do? Triathlon? We call it I think it's called duathlons. I would call them biathlons, and they got confused with like the skiing and shooting, and you had to drive so far for a race. Now in California, you could pretty much within 50-mile radius. At least it used to be pre-COVID. You could find a triathlon every weekend. Too many races. Hey, I remember the days when I'd race a Saturday and a Sunday, and I'd do like a sprint distance I did a half one time on a Saturday and a sprint the next day. And that was hard to do. I had some luck with it, and I did 3 Ironman races in 3 months, and that was really hard to do. Yeah.
There's a couple of those races where you do it's like a 3-day, it's like a sprint, an Olympic, and then a half.
Oh, you can sign up for all of them?
Yeah,
that's
what the race is. You do all 3,
and
like Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Wow. Yeah, I noticed in the Olympics, I think they have like a team triathlon relay thing right now, which is, things have changed a lot. Essentially triathlon's still the same, but it's changed a lot. Yeah. So is there a race you guys are all kind of looking forward to doing now?
A lot of us are doing all different stuff.
I'm doing Alcatraz in
Yeah.
a little less than 3 weeks.
All right, that's a good time.
That's right here.
That's a good time. 13 times I've done Alcatraz.
So,
Know the route. Okay, because I got lost twice. I got lost. A volunteer, I'm like, this way, you get that way, and I was leading the frickin' swim, and they've changed the course over the years. When I first started doing Alcatraz, it was a swim into Ghirardelli Square, and then it was a ride to across the Golden Gate, which was wild, and then we had to do a 14-mile cross-country run over the Dipsy Trail, which is like the second oldest race next to the Boston. And now it's changed. I don't even know the distances. There's a guy named Eric Gilsonen. He's just moved here. I don't know if you heard about Eric Gilsonen, but he's the announcer, and he's done Alcatraz probably more than anybody else. He's done like 25 times. And I heard he just moved to Encinitas. So you guys. Well,
So that water's really cold, right?
it's cold, but a full-length wetsuit, you're 3-4, whatever, it's fine. Anticipate the shock. Know that when you jump off that ferry boat, I suggest maybe 2 swim caps, or at least a silicone swim cap, or they have some neoprene swim caps. You anticipate the shock because it would be kind of like, oh, and then again, it's not much colder. I think about it, it's not much colder than it is right now. I mean, we get this weird upwelling going on. At least down in Coronado, it's like 57 degrees. So it's a great race. Well, ideally, they planned it. Was one year TV wanted to show they wanted to film it, and they said we have to have this date. I just knock out my thingy, and they go, we want to have this date, and the race director's like, that's not a good date to have it because of the currents. So, well, we're having it this date, and what happened was you jump off the pier and you're supposed to swim in this direction, and everyone started getting pulled out towards the Golden Gate. And they had to rescue. Half the field had to get brought over. It was ridiculous. So hopefully the currents are in your favor. What you can also do is do kind of like a offset navigation where instead of swimming this way, you're swimming this way where the currents kind of like bring you into the cove. If I'm not sure where the race swim finish is anymore.
They finish at the marina now. So what they suggest doing is in the first part of the race, you swim across the current, and then you kind of make the right turn and let the current take you.
Yeah.
So what I've read from people posted reviews is that if you turn too early, the current will take you past your exit, and you gotta swim back and take the current.
Yeah, it's a challenging race. One of my favorite races, the third races I ever did. Like I said, I no wetsuits were allowed. I was all of 18. I placed 10th. Got my name in the paper, and I was like hooked for life. Well, not for life. Well, I'll get back to triathlon, but I was hooked for a very long time for that race. One of the discouraging things I heard about Alcatraz, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, the swim was canceled because the currents were so bad. They canceled the swim, and they made it like a bike run, and people were ticked off because it's an expensive race, and the whole race is all about the swim.
It's all about the swim.
All about the swim. I think they offer like, next year we'll offer $40 off. No, because they didn't time it. They gotta time the currents. They know that. There's charts out there where they can see the currents. Have you done a lot of ocean swimming now? Pretty much, yeah.
You were swimming here last night, or the shores,
I
or
was at
something.
the shores last night.
Yeah, that's exciting. I remember not the year that I didn't wear a wetsuit. Another year I wore a sleeveless wetsuit. I should have used a full sleeve, and I was so cold. I was on the bike, and I thought my bike was broken because I was shivering. I'm like, what's going on? My bike's broken. Oh, my God, it's broken. I'm like, no, it's just me shivering. And eventually I warmed up. But that's exciting.
That is exciting. I didn't realize you were doing that.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know if it's exciting or not.
We'll see how excited it is.
It's good. It's good to have those nerves going into something. People ask every time I dive, are you nervous? I go, yeah, I'm nervous. I once asked a skydiver, it was on his 10,000th jump. I go, are you nervous? He's, yep. The day I'm not nervous, I'm not going to jump anymore. So I don't know if that means anything to do in triathlon, but it's good to have that. It means you care. I mean, it's anticipation. It's great. Adrenaline. And the finish line, is like the ultimate. So many things in life you don't get to see a finish line. You're a race and you cross that finish line. The feeling of like completion and satisfaction. It's good. Think of all the positives of why you race. And when they don't outweigh the negatives, then you're doing something right. right? Right. Yeah. What other magic can I tell you? Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. You guys are more experienced in the last 8 years in triathlon than I am. You know, I'm kind of old school, but
I got a question, unrelated to triathlon sports, but related to skills. I'm active duty Marine. Last
Okay.
year, when that incident in Kabul airport, it really hit all of us really hard. Nobody was expecting it. We
yeah,
all had a lot of feelings about Afghanistan, especially those who've been there.
yeah.
Has there been an event in the SEAL that affected the SEAL community in that way?
Oh,
Maybe like Operation Red Wing.
oh, definitely. I mean, Red Wings was one. I mean, we lost three guys during the operation, and another 17 guys on the helicopter going to rescue those guys. Fast forward a year, another helicopter, included with my roommate who I was living with down here, was on the helo. An op went bad intel. CH-46 came down too low. Stinger missile went right in the backside of it and just blew it out of the window. Blew it all over the place. I was at a wedding in Chicago, and my other roommate, I didn't tell you guys, for the first 3 years working this job, I'm a GS. I work at Bud's. I was also living in Northern California, so I'd get up at 3 in the morning. I'd drive an hour and a half to Oakland Airport. I'd fly down here. I'd work till like Wednesday or Thursday, and I'd go back. I did that for 3 years. I was simultaneously the head swim cross-country coach at Sonoma State University, and I was a Bud's instructor. So when I was down here, I was living with a guy who was actually on my cross-country team that I coached in high school. I ran into him, like, hey, you own a house down here. Let me rent a room because I'm here 4 days a week. No problem. He goes, hey, I got another roommate. His name's Nick. He also lives in the house. Hey, no problem. And so fast forward, a year goes by. I see Nick on Wednesday. He's like all excited because he gets to go work with Dev Group. They're SEAL Team 6. I'm like, wow, how do you get to work with them? You're at SEAL Team 5, and SEAL Team 6 is like this hush-hush, varsity, super secret, squirrely team. And so he's excited. And then I'm in Chicago, and my roommate Jim is like, hey, did you hear about the helo went down? I'm like, yeah. He's like, Nick was on the helo. I'm like, oh, my God. Here's a young kid, 22 years old, happened to be, on this helicopter with these guys, get blown out of the sky. So, yeah, horrific. And then to your story, our very good family friend, their son joined the Marine Corps last year, or maybe 2 years now, and he was on the his best friend, who was one of the 13 killed, had a newborn, or was having a newborn like a month after, from Santa Rosa, and he just traumatized for the rest of his life. Awful. Yeah. So I can totally relate. But yeah, I've probably lost a dozen of the students that I put through either combat, self-inflicted wounds, or training. And then a couple of the guys from my platoons. I mean, just the nature of being in the military.
How do you move forward from that, though?
Well,
How do you not get
it's just
have that pull you down?
well, you celebrate their life. You remember them as they were, and you maybe do something in their honor, or you live as best as you can, and you move on. You can't dwell on it. You can't let it eat you alive and turn to the dark side. You do things like sporting events. You use things that are healthy, not damaging. I know so many team guys that are alcoholics or have turned to drugs, and it's just not good. And there's really not enough resources, in my opinion. I mean, they have psychologists and they have chaplains and stuff, but there's just not enough of them to go around. And it's kind of I don't want to say it's frowned upon, but it's hard for an A-type personality who's seen as this like soldier warrior to seek out help. It really is. It is. It's just like, what, you're really gonna bring this up? We gotta go to war. You're bringing up this weak ass shit now. It's just like, it's very difficult. And the Marines are they're proudest. They're extremely proud. I think their training is the hardest, and I have tremendous respect. I have some recon friends that I've worked with, and they're tremendously disciplined. But yeah.
Well, it's actually changed a lot. Back in OIF, OEF, when we first started, PTSD and those things were taken very seriously.
Well,
And I think in the past few years, we've learned a lot, started taking it a lot more seriously. It's better.
yeah.
Especially since, with, the suicide rate, it's kind of.
Yeah, it was 22, and I think it's gone up from 22 a day. And those aren't just old veterans; they're young guys, and some of them never seen combat. Some but the guys who have that experience is devastating. You don't know how to compress that and talk about it and figure it out. It's not good. Yeah, that's depressing. On that note.
Anybody else doing any other races?
We've got Santa Cruz. That's your big race.
Yep, I'm doing Santa Cruz.
Is anyone else doing Santa Cruz?
Maybe John.
That's where I went to.
September.
So I started undergrad. I was a banana slug,
Okay.
and I think I know the venue. It's
swim
changed
around
over the
pier,
years.
actually.
Yeah, it's got cold water as well,
Yeah, it is.
and nice rolling bike ride, and then hopefully the bike takes you through it like a park. But yeah,
It's a
and that's where Mark Allen lives now, Santa Cruz.
You put about cheers.
I've done, so I lived in Santa Cruz. I went to school there, 93, 94, 95, so I trained there, and there's like 3 other races. There's called the Hammerhead, there's the Sentinel, there's a couple races, and then the triathlon they have now, I think was designed maybe 10 years ago, so I never did Santa Cruz. I just know the area really well.
I did it last year. Where is that last bike?
Is it up the highway? Up and back?
Yeah.
Highway,
Just to stay right along
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
coast.
Yeah, I mean, there's some little rollers, and then
It's the wind.
Yeah.
So you guys,
you
like,
get
a
windy.
couple of us have matched up in Milwaukee.
Oh, it's Milwaukee this year.
Yeah.
Oh.
We
Yeah.
all got our races.
Yeah. You got a good bike carrier? Good bike box?
So I think I'm taking the RV.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It's good to see you. Yeah.
I got a big bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An RV.
The trials and tribulations of transporting my bike, making sure it got there.
Yeah.
One year at Hawaii Ironman, I usually get there like 6 days before, and I didn't get there till like 2 days before. I was really stressed. Another year, my rear derailleur was completely broken off the rear hanger. I had to like duct tape it to the frame, and oh gosh, that's what turned me off most about triathlons is the you can be in tremendously good shape, but if your bike breaks on you, unless you're really creative, you're done. Your race is over. So maintain your bikes. Know how to change a flat tire. Know what to do if your chain breaks.
But at least then your race is over. Where with what you do now, if your equipment breaks, your life is over. So then
Well, yeah, completely different. I mean, it's
At least yeah.
Does Pride Precision make wetsuits?
I don't know. There's probably 100 different wetsuit companies
Yeah,
now.
there's so many now.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you coming. It's sure.
Wahoo! I got some swag. I'm like a sponsored athlete.
There you are.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh wow! It's very extra cool. You should have. No, that's cool. That's good. No, you maybe you had a little spark seeing you guys. I miss triathlon. I keep on
And we'll
talking
see you out
about.
there.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Well, Alcatraz is my second favorite race, and I have a picture. There's only 2 pictures I really have in my office at work. One is my seal graduation picture from Buds, and the other one is a picture. And I'll send it to you. It's me holding my daughter at the Hawaii Ironman finish line. Which back in the day you could do that.
Right.
Now you can't
bring
do
your
it.
kid, yeah,
And my daughter's like 10 months old, and my wife waited for an hour to hand her to me.
So you can cross the line.
And I crossed the finish line. I think, yeah, I'm pretty badass. Like I'm this new dad. And then literally right after, this new mom with twins, same age. She gave birth to twins, and she crosses the line. Like, oh, I'm unworthy. I'm just so, yeah. Keep training. Stay positive. Take the the good races with the bad races, learn from the bad races, support each other, the roller coaster of like good days, bad days, and man, I really have nothing but positives to think about the triathlons I did, the community that I was in, and this how healthy a lifestyle it is. And you cannot not train. That's the problem living in Sanitas. It's just freaking. This is like the ground zero of triathlon. USCS series. I don't know if you knew about that, but that was like the Bud Light series back in the day. I remember racing up at San Clemente and all these San Diego races, and you had the legends of Scott Tinley and Mark Allen, and I don't know if you know those names, but there's only one guy who beat them back in the day, and his name was Mike Pigg. And people don't know about him, but the Mike Pigg story is I raced up in Northern California, my second ever triathlon, and I came out of the water. It was a race up near Eureka. I came out of the water first. He caught me on the bike, and then blew me away on the run. So I got second. And they talk about the awards. And they go, "Oh, first place, Mike Pigg." I'm like, Mike Pigg. It's not gonna get very far to the name of Mike Pigg. And then like literally 2 years later, he was the first guy to dethrone Mark Allen, who was like the man. You guys know Mark Allen? Look him up. Won a Hawaii 6 times. Just the winningest guy, and he coaches online. He's the nicest guy. Really humble dude. So, anyway, this is great. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hey, good luck.